Coming to you from the City of the Weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this amazing pre-recorded edition of The Curious Realm. I am currently on the road for work and had the opportunity to sit down and talk with our good friend Jared Murphy, who is the author of It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us. And we talk with Jared typically about the idea that, it doesn't have to be alien civilizations that did all of these things. Humanity is an ingenious lot. Same thing that we talk with Stephen Myers about, like it doesn't have to be aliens that built the pyramids. We are a pretty ingenious lot of folks. So one of the things that we discuss with Jared regularly is the idea of terraforming, specifically the idea of Terra Preta. I recently posted an article about Terra Preta, about how the ancient Amazonians created mysterious dark earth on purpose. Now, this stuff has become like a wonder material to backyard gardeners, things like that. People are finally starting to, in the Western world, ring into this idea. But Jared, folks in the Amazon, things like that, have been dealing with technologies like this for years and years.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long, long time.
Yeah, that was, it's not a subject I get tired of talking about. So where we are, like you said, is there could be aliens. We're not saying there aren't.
Oh, I am in the camp of there definitely are.
Yeah, there's space traveling anthropologists everywhere.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's a lot of leaps to go over something as big as something that, like Terra Preta, and this. Well, and here's what's interesting about the article, since you have it up, and for people to see if they're not just listening, if they can get to it and visually look. Ancient Amazonians created mysterious dark earth on purpose, and that what really is fascinating about that is that they immediately talk about two things by saying Amazonians that, okay, well, there again, we have primitive loincloth, very smart, but primitive villages, just nomadic. You're picturing any Smithsonian view of an ancient caveman society with a loincloth, and they are just surviving, and they create this soil because they mix a bunch of stuff together and they burn it, or they let it. It's a complex composting elixir that easily could be made by any primitive group of people. And that's the part that is deceptive. Not only is it important that we take away from this article that, yeah, they're creating this soil that, like what you're highlighting, it's more whole, it's more fertile. It holds up to more organic carbon than most regions' soil. Crops grow better if it's high phosphorus, nitrogen, and calcium content, etc. And what's important is that this specific Terra Preta that was found in Brazil was identified not only as being just a cocktail. It's not a primitive cocktail. It's in North Africa. It's in South Africa. It's found all over the world. This isn't just a recipe that got propagated because it was a good idea to other farmers and it spread like wildfire, and it was a simple process to make. The exact Terra Preta that's found in Brazil has never, after 100 years of research, been replicated. Nobody knows how to make it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just have, not only is it highly rich growing soil, it's self-replicating. It seems to repair itself, and it has the electromagnetic abilities to send and receive signals. So if you are filtering heavy metals like carbon dioxide and what, they mention it, that it can filter contaminants in the air. Who built a soil found on multiple continents that is capable of functioning as an air filter for a vast worldwide society, chemical filter, it's filtering heavy metals, and it's self-replicating, so they don't have to constantly maintain it to do its job, to grow the richest, best nutrient-filled food that's possible. And it's on multiple contents in the identical recipe. It's not just a matter of, hey, they, found a soil that these primitive cultures and societies around the world are mimicking and adding on to. But the lowest layers, the thickest layers of this stuff, in some areas it's 20 foot thick, and all of it indicates that it indicates that a more advanced human society was using this product that they were building to also work with their polygonal constructions that are canceling earthquakes. It's a frequency and energy intelligent society that is also terraforming the planet. I have a documentary called Terra, and it touches on all this. It's on YouTube, on my channel on Not Aliens, or on my website. You can link to it. You can get to it from that link. But all of this represents a society. TerraCore, the documentary, now there it is. I think it's just a good overview of what is this soil's connection to this advanced society, and what are the other elements that we're finding that we mistakenly assign to a primitive culture or a dynastic people like the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Olmecs, pick one, or the Egyptians, and it's just not accurate. And so then we get
and not just that, but the utter misconception of, quote, technology. Capital T technology just means something that makes your life easier, man. And if you geoengineer a soil so that your crops grow with half the water, or grow in the mountains so that you don't have to till the soil as much, like, that is technology. You've geoengineered that soil no different than we have bioengineered plants to resist insects.
That's a really smart point, specifically the analogy, that example of the insects. I'm going to use that.
Well, I mean, good God, it was a friggin' fryer that started genetic splicing peas together that led to exactly where we are now with Monsanto. All he was doing was taking a little hairbrush and, let me take some pollen from this one and cross-pollinate it over here and see what happens. And that's where we got into the whole concept of crossbreeding plants in the way that we do now. Not that we weren't doing it for millennia before that, making maize and things like that. Maize is a prime example of how they took a native plant and cultivated it and made it grow.
I'll never forget watching Scott Walter on America Unearthed. One of the best episodes was, because I don't,
great show. I love that show.
What was that?
So that's a great show. I love that show.
It is, and I am lucky enough to know Scott. He lives near me in Minnesota, but the actual episode I don't get a lot out of. I think shows are entertaining and they're kind of 50,000 foot view, but Unearthed, America Unearthed is just a great show because it gets into some specifics. And one was corn, and one was about why is the corn genetically 8 to 13,000 years old. And they said at least 8,000 years old in Wisconsin. You have corn that's been maintained by people we clearly have no eyes on and no history of. And that's just one micro example of we don't have our history right.
And once again, that is a huge example of the use of technology by a primitive people. That is a technological concept to let's put this stuff into rows and figure out the best way to grow it.
And you can line that up to say that it was village technology, it was primitive technology, or we can look at the fact, uncomfortable as it is, that we're talking about survivors, tens of thousands of years of survivors, maybe, that mimicked what they saw being done by a more technically advanced society.
Sure. And
in this case, or just, it didn't just, maybe it made common sense. It evolved out of a subconscious stored memory that it makes sense to do it in the way that would make, it look high tech. And maybe it was just, re-engineered by primitive people, but it does not explain why, when you add up all the personalities and traits of Terra Preta, that it was accidental.
Yeah.
It wasn't accidental.
No. If it was accidental, it would be much more widespread and not in the harvested patches that it is.
Yeah. And again, it's just the coincidences get less coincidental when you go, why is it in South Africa and North Africa, in multiple countries? It's Central and South America. It's the identical recipe. It's the same group of people. Even
crossed tribally within the Amazonian area, Jared, would show the fact that it's a technology. Technology is something that's learned. It's like saying that apes don't use technology. Yeah, they do. They use sticks to get ants out of anthills, and they fish for it, and they teach their children to do it. That is the use of tools and technology,
Yeah.
And a primitive Amazonian tribe teaching another tribe how to make Terra Preta is no different. That is the passing of a technology from one person to another. So.
No, and that's what's interesting to me about it is like, okay, well, hey, it doesn't have to be. It could be a primitive people. Well, no. Yes, they're making Terra Preta. They're making a form of biochar that, for everyone out there who doesn't know, if you're going to go open an apple orchard, I've talked about this before. If you're going to open a commercial farm and you wanted to have soil that was more prepped for, say, apple trees, you would buy a modern biochar, which is a form of Terra Preta. It's a mix of biocarbons that have been burnt, or a mix of material, a very fancy compost, essentially, sort of. And it would contain a mineral complexity that would be learned and towards apple trees. And if you wanted to have a different kind of farm, you could engineer your soil, which is a fancy term for just, adding a little salt and, sugar, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
If you want to take the analogy and tweak the soil to your current plant. But when you look at the technology of polygonal construction, and you look at the complexity of Terra Preta with a frequency energy technology in mind, why it would have electromagnetic currency properties is, I don't think, coincidental. I think that when we look at these polygonal constructions, going down to the foundation, that's the thing that's missing. Is that the building itself is interesting, but no one talks about the foundation itself. When you go with a frequency energy technology, that we're looking at how frequencies and waves travel through the ground.
Yep.
And how would they work transferring? Here's something that's not discussed. How do you take a technology from what we're looking at on screen? For those of you should get to this and take a look at the polygonal construction. How do we get a frequency to travel and an energy to travel through multiple types of soil? It's not just that it's a black earth. How would you put the crystalline content? Like what we're looking at right now, for everyone who gets to the screen, is these are the pillar foundational locations for the amphitheaters in Greece and Rome. And these frequencies and energies, these light, what we're looking at right now is the actual placement of the pylons for the theater itself cancels earthquakes.
Yeah.
And it causes the building to maintain indefinitely and not be destroyed from a wave. That technology is not primitive. And if you are
that's far from primitive.
Yeah. So
the knowledge of acoustics and things like that by ancient civilizations, specifically frequencies, especially in ancient Greece, was phenomenal. I mean, I've been to Epidaurus. I have personally seen and heard the demonstration of a match being struck on stage and hearing it at the top. It's, as an audio engineer, it's a moment in life. It's amazing. It's amazing. And yes, like, you have to know how sound travels. Even knowing that places like Stonehenge are meant to resonate with vibration and amplify voices when spoken in certain places. When you go to places like Malta, there is a chamber at Malta where when you chant in the chamber, it begins resonating in theta waves.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, when you're talking initiation ceremonies, things to put you into a hypnotic state and hear the voices of the gods, like, that's what you'd need. So they had amazing knowledge of frequencies, the way that the earth works, their connection to the earth as opposed to ours. Like, we may be at technology on a different level, but their technology worked with the earth in a different way because of their intimate knowledge and connection to the earth. Like, we have lost some of that as a society.
For sure. There's something missing about the narrative of what we're doing to tell that story. And it's so grossly it's misinformative to just state, well, here's what we know. This is the way it was. And it's like, well, I'm not trying to be hypersensitive to the way that you tell about what you found, but why don't you stick with, you found X, Y, and Z? We still don't have the full puzzle. I think the problem that I have is that it closes people's eyes and perception to the greater narrative. So even if it's dynastic information, even if it's a dynastic story for some people, it just could be more open-minded as we find city after city, and we find building after building that indicates that everything from the Mayans and Aztecs to the Egyptians are much more extensive. Their societal footprint was much larger than we were considering. And again, the other confusing thing is that if the Mayans, Aztecs, Egyptians did find the remnants, the megalithic constructions of a much more ancient and much more advanced society, we're not having that dialogue. We're not talking about it. We're not looking at it that way because we just assume that, oh, well, these societies are still contemporary to the last few thousand years, but we just found more buildings. And I guess we have to first, it's hilarious, but the idea that we have to jump over the disbelief that, well, I guess there was millions instead of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or a few million, as is multiple million. And we're just not saying that, when in reality, at some point, these megalithic constructions, if they're not credited to the Egyptians and the Aztecs and the Mayans and these other societies, then what we have is everything from Terra Preta to genetic information that I think is pointing to a much more ancient underlying society, if not multiple, and if not worldwide, multiple, it more advanced and intelligent societies that fell much, much earlier than when the Egyptians came in and took over some of the ruins, and the Aztecs took over some of the ruins and rebuilt their image. They mimicked what they found. They repaired what they had, which is why we have the varying, we go from large megalithic blocks to little mud bricks connected to the same building. And those are very different technologies. And primitive Terra Preta, primitive terraforming and putting together a biochar, a compost. That's something that farming just kind of sort of figured out. How does my plant grow better? Or why not cross pollinate? Why not figure this out? Figure out what even pollen is. I mean, there's a lot of primitive hands-on. How do we go from a wolf to a poodle? I mean, there's
well, and not many people realize that like every bit of that is us. There would be zero natural poodles in the world. They would not exist. You would have nothing but wolves. It was quite literally man's domestication within the last few thousand years that brought them to all the different subspecies and characteristics, everything from chihuahuas being bred to, chase rats and things like that down holes and out of their holes in Mexico to like every one of them was specifically purpose bred. Every single dog that you see in the world.
I want a soccer chinchilla.
Every single one. And that is mind blowing to think about, that like German shepherds weren't a wild breed running the Alps. You know, it didn't exist. Like
we had to make them happen.
Yeah. We made that happen. And even right now, I popped up on screen. Oh, not the 3-fingered mummies yet. But from Emory University, soil quality critical to help some U.S. crops weather heat stress from climate change. Like right now, we are worried about soil quality in the U.S. Our soil is malnourished. We're almost up against another dust bowl in many areas, not just with drought, but with the malnourishment of our own soil. And to know that Terra Preta has been around, like, how long does it take to relearn the lesson?
Right.
That's the question, is how long, and even with our vast technology, Jared, how long does it take us as a humanity to relearn our lesson?
And we have indicators that some of the corn and wheat crop came from the Middle East, and that the origin. Well, what I find interesting about that, again, there's always this precursor to assumption that, well, we're finding the first. They always like, well, this is the first location. I think the better question is if the last concentration is, if the last place you found surviving evidence is the Middle East or the out of Africa theory. If that's the last place you found surviving evidence, then when you look harder at all the places you don't think we're from, you're going to find more, deeper than you wanted to look, deeper than you are looking. No different than Michael Cremo pointed out in Forbidden Archaeology. You only find what you're looking for. And if it's not 8,000-year-old corn in Wisconsin, and if it's actually 30 or 20,000-year-old corn or a managed wheat in Turkey or the Middle East, the reality is we're going to find it even older, and we're going to find those evidences, but we aren't looking, or we don't want to see it. So, and it's not all of us. It's just, I'm just pointing it out that when we do locate them offshore, that's something else that no one talks about, is that the shorelines today are not the shorelines 50,000, 80,000, 100,000, a million years ago. Our shorelines were very different, which is why when Graham Hancock one of the reasons Graham Hancock became very famous in the 90s, do you remember when he dived off the coast of India at a city site? That the last time that city, which was credited to being built by Krishna himself, whatever. The point is that this city off the coast of India, this is the west coast of India. It's so far out to sea. The last time it was on a shoreline was at least 36,000 years ago. Yeah. And they pull up pots and they pull up all these things. It's in a high current area. It's not easy to dive. But there's an awareness then that the Terra Preta and that the most ancient indications of human civilization and eco-engineering with soil may be underwater. And that is a problem, because the story of us is then tainted to this. We're learning a lot about us, but we're missing the greater story of and this is where everyone talks about Atlantis. And Atlantis had 10 cities, allegedly. And no matter what, it's a story that's pointing to the human collective knowledge that there was a larger society throughout the world that is then inundated with water. And I think that that's not an untrue statement. And I'm not trying to off type us or off, rabbit hole, but we have Terra Preta that's likely sitting hundreds of miles off coast, underwater, that was part of that original, more advanced, again, who said that advanced people didn't like shorelines? They got them now, but we have the very intercontinental remnants from Peru to Egypt, Sardinia, as you already pointed out, all over Greece. We have these megalithic constructions which have these complex foundational designs, along with the crystal content of sands and soils that we thought were just sands and soils that aren't Terra Preta, that may have all been part of a network of engineered, terraformed earth that was part connecting to these megalithic constructions that weren't just about earthquake control. They were sending and receiving messages. They were not inundating themselves like we are in a giant microwave.
Yeah. They were connected to frequencies in a totally different way.
They were doing it ethically and farm to table with steel cut oats. Sorry.
Steel cut oats.
I just love that. I'd like oats, please.
That sounds like a great buffet right there.
You don't want to eat oats that aren't steel cut. Steel cut oats?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, and the thing is, we have forgotten ourselves numerous times over as humanity, all over the world. And even right now, Jared, to pivot, talking about rabbit holes. The second topic that we were going to be talking about tonight is the Mexican mummies that have come up.
I think they're right on topic.
And that is, it's another one where I think people have forgotten history. I don't know. Right now, we'll see what happens. I mean, they just released the video the other day of the actual X-rays, all that kind of stuff. Everything that they are saying right now is that the bodies appear to be made of a single body, not to be assembled, as has been thought. I don't know about the eggs in the tummy, things like that. We'll see. But to me, it's one of those, the issue that we have to bear is Jaime. I love Jaime Maussan. Don't get me wrong. Like, I have always loved Jaime Maussan. I have thought he has had chutzpah beyond chutzpah for decades, being one of the first reporters out there to really go on TV and start doing full-on UFO reporting, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But there was the case of the previous mummies that we've had, where I don't know, the mummies that we've had previously in 2018 were proven to be that of a young child. All that kind of stuff. The mummy of the small alien body.
Well, I don't think any of this changes. We've it's so weird how we've collectively as a society have accepted that the elongated skulls of Peru, that the Nazca people, assuming, well, that's just a name we've assigned. And although, they existed, you have elongated skulls that are not cranial deformations. So we have this thing around the world, cranial deformations of people shaping the human skull through from the time of birth to make it elongated to mimic what were the Nazca skulls, which are naturally born. The cranial, the arterial dissections, the skull cap, everything about it is different than the standard skull. So we know besides stories of Bigfoot and assorted everybody else or different forms of humankind, we have in reality mummies, skulls that are for sure born differently and not deformed, not a mistake, but actual elongated skulls from a race of human beings that, if the research could get continually verified, they're at least from the Black Caucasus region of Europe. They end up in Peru, but they're found all over the world. There's different cultures that mimic these elongated skulls. And the reality is that they're obviously from a society that was human, that is unique, that has a different skull structure. Was it because their brain capacity and activity was from a society that worked with Terra? Let's put all let's test it. The template always has to be to test it against what do we know about the ancient past. And part of it is, it's not just that we find these mummies they're also, by the way, that for those that don't know, the oldest, as far as we know, if you look up oldest mummies ever found on Earth, the Nazca people with the elongated skulls date back at least 13,000 years. This is prior or at or just before the Younger Dryas or the Great Flood, what we think of as the biblical flood, which is not that old compared to the blocks and societies, Göbekli Tepe and everything else. So we have these elongated skulled human beings. Oh, also showing signs of surgeries that are way beyond what should have been capable of in the period. Cranial surgeries.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like full-on brain surgeries, like and holes drilled in the skull to relieve pressure from tumors, all kinds of things.
Well, and you remember seeing the one Peruvian skull that had, they don't even know what the metal is, but they actually had it sutured back together, and they have no idea what the material science says on that. So I do think that there is a solid indication that whether these Mexican mummies are alien or they're part of, again, what is the remnants of a society. If you understand frequencies and energies and biotechnologies like Terra, Preta, again, adding all the pieces, why would you not have a society that's doing body modifications through manipulative, primitive versions are you take a wolf and you breed two things together and you eventually get a poodle. But if you're an advanced ancient society, there you go. There's the replaced section of skull. Yeah. And it fused together, and we don't even know what that material is. We don't even know how they did it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And no one's asking the question. So Mexican alien mummies or Peruvian.
The big question for me about the mummies in Mexico, real or not, and the Peruvian government has asked, whoa, did you just say that you just took some skeletons out of the country?
Well, that is a big piece of it.
Pretty sure you're supposed to declare if you're bringing in any fruit, rocks.
Yeah. Well, I
get in trouble for bringing crystals back. And I'm like, Chris, it's not a porous rock. You can't.
Would that be funny? Chris, would that be funny?
It's like, what do you have? A critter inside of it. It's a crystal. You can see inside of it.
Wouldn't that be funny though? It's like, do you have anything to declare? Yeah, I bought some oranges.
Yeah. No. Like I've declared all kinds of things, but ain't nobody apparently declared that they left Peru with some skeletons. And some mummies.
They said it was a fake statue or curio. That's the other thing.
So it's like, okay, so you're just going to openly admit in the Mexican Senate to grave robbing.
I'm a little confused on that. They thought that part of it is they thought the information was worth pointing out, but why not keep it and go through proper? Well, okay, yeah. I understand. Conspiratorially, I understand why you didn't go through proper channels. Two, though, whether it left Peru or not.
Yeah.
Well, again, we have these Peruvian Paracas skulls, and no one is answering the questions. No one's asking the questions. That silence in itself is not conspiratorial. It's just factual. They're not following through with available technologies to explore the complexity of these operations, the complexity of the DNA. They're not answering it. They have I don't know, thousands of skulls. They have the oldest mummies on Earth. The Paracas are the oldest that we know of, 13,000 plus years old. There are bones still protruding and sticking out all over Peru.
Yeah.
So yet again, we have a polygonal, very advanced, other than Egypt. And there are places all around the world. Sardinia, there are places in Russia, all over the world, megalithic Japan, very advanced constructions, soil samples. Again, we're talking about Terra Preta, all over the earth. And now we have these mummies that look alien. And again, it's a great deflection. If you have everyone talking about aliens, then you don't have anyone talking about how crazy were we getting 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000, 200,000 years ago, like some of the nano-sized engineered samples found of what looked like machined parts in Siberia. When they were looking for where they were going to do gold mines, they found nano-sized, machined, tubular gold parts of machinery that was an estimated at least 220,000 years old. What were these mummies other than genetically modifying humans, or advanced humans using all their biotechnologies, including self-investigation, modifying the human being to do research. And I think the thing is falling apart in I just saw the dust.
The powder, the diatoms falling off of it, and that's where these were found, was in diatomaceous earth in caves. For those of you that don't know, diatomaceous earth is basically dead critters. If you're a chicken raiser, you may have used it to keep mites off of your chickens, things like that. You can mix diatomaceous earth into water and drink it and cleanse your system.
Oh, wow.
All kinds of things.
You guys, for everyone listening, if you haven't watched the video, you should watch the video. This is just watching them set that up for the MRI for the Mexican mummy alien or whatever, Peruvian alien mummy, and watching the bits and pieces of it fall off, and they're holding it like a toy. It's just kind of funny. I'm waiting for the kung fu grip or the battle damage chest to go.
Yeah, to see the arm just like, ha!
Yeah. Yep. I just think it's interesting. I think it's important that we investigate all this. And then I think the very exercise in discussing that it could be something much more complex, and the story could be much more complex. Again, not discounting aliens.
That's just it. The story of the first mummies became very, very complex, Jared, to the point that the Russian scientist that was involved with testing things and all that, was found to have never actually worked at the university that he claimed to work at. They were like, they claimed him to be this huge, fantastic scientist. And it's like, the Vos did a great article on it. Whenever it all went down. And like he was proven that, he lied about his credentials, that he didn't work at the university that he said he worked at. There was never any secondary examination, independent examination of the data done. Never any samples released for independent examination, things like that. It was all pretty well kept on lockdown by Gaia, all that kind of stuff. And it's like that, kind of the way that NASA pointed out in their panel, when James Fox asked about the skeletons and the remains. They were like, well, we'll see if they share any data. Like, NASA shares data. That's what we do. Like, we have samples from the moon, some of the rarest samples in the world. If you're doing lunar work and need a sample, contact us. We'll send you some lunar soil to do some work. Like, that's what we do, is share data.
Do we?
And that's really what science does. So that's the curiosity, is will any of this be sent for independent analysis?
That's a good point as a rabbit hole. Do you remember a dump truck going to the moon to bring back enough soil to share? Is that how much soil we brought back? Was it like, did we back up a dump truck and
through the many missions that we brought back? And I mean, I've seen. I'm from Houston. I've been to to Johnson Space Center. I don't know how many times, and yeah, they had all kinds of stuff set up. I'm trying to remember how many pounds of lunar soil and rock they brought back. Hold on,
really?
I got my Google machine.
The Google machine may tell us all. Tell us, Google. Great Google.
So let's see here. The total amount brought back 842 pounds.
But that's not a lot.
That you know, when you're talking about especially the amount needed for study, when you're talking about, hey, let's get 2-3 pounds of lunar soil, spread it out to an inch, and see if we can grow plants in it. You know, 842 pounds can go a long way. So,
I do understand that. You're right. It can, but you can't give it away by the pound. Then you can't even give it away by the ounce.
No. But like they said, if you need data, if you need samples, things like that, like, get at us. We'll talk. You know, they don't have a problem necessarily sharing that data, is what they're saying. And in previous circumstances with not just the Paracas skeletons, the 3-fingered skeletons that were claimed to have alien anatomy, things like that, but also in the case of the Chilean skeleton, the tiny skeleton that came out a few years ago.
The Star Childs?
Yeah. Same situation where it's like no data being shared, no samples being shared, no samples being sent out for independent study, anything like that. So, and that's kind of where the concern comes from with this, at least for me, is that I'm a believer. I would love it to be the case that, you know, we are looking at actual alien bodies. That would be fantastic. It would be the news of everybody's lifetime, Jared.
Can you imagine crashing on Earth and that's it? You lose a baby and you live in, like, what's that alien family story? We live in Peru.
Yeah.
And their burial system, despite being an ancient alien that flew to whatever, they lived in Brazil or they lived in Peru and they lost a baby and that's it. They lost a baby and it turned into a mummified remain in some
sideshow. Yeah. Well, yeah.
So,
I've said for years, imagine the case of an alien civilization approaching Earth, having never visited here, Jared. They would be getting everything from I Love Lucy all the way to now as they get closer and closer and closer with zero frame of reference as to who humanity actually is. You know, so if you just take our beamed out communications and think about it in terms of how an alien civilization would think about us, sight unseen, that's all they have. That'd be a pretty crazy thought form.
You know what'd be interesting is, so if you were really advanced, would it occur to you to check the simplest frequencies would it occur to you use technology that you hadn't been privy to in your society's lifetime for thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years? So would they even check or hear FM, AM? Yeah. Would they understand television frequencies? Would they translate it correctly? Would they never even pick it up because they just want the thing to look at was nothing but universal static?
I've got a thumb drive right here in my hand. This is like the modern Library of Congress, man. Like I could build computers with the schematics on here. I could restart who knows what parts of civilization.
Yeah, and if you don't have the technology to read it?
Yep. If if you dig it up 1,000 years from now, because I dropped it in my backyard, do you know what it is?
Oh, yeah.
Number one. B, do you have the technology to read what's on it? You know, and that's what we're faced with so much of this, be it Terra, Preta, what have you, is that this is a technology that to Amazonian people has never gone away. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, I had a great conversation with the one Brazilian. There is one MUFON representative for Brazil. That blew my mind. I was like, you poor man, I will pray for you. That is one of the most populated sighting countries in the world, and there is one of you. But he was like, we have two reasons why we don't get reports from people out in the basins, from people out on the rivers, things like that. Number one, it's like a 2-day river journey to get to São Paulo to come give a report. You know, it's not like they have a phone or something like that and they can call. Number two, it's not a strange thing for them to see lights in the sky. They aren't going to report it as an anomaly because it's not out of the ordinary for them. They see it all the time and have seen it for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's not strange to them.
So to get everybody's, thought process going, that flash drive you just held up.
Yeah.
That is a good analogy for when you look at Terra Preta and genetics. So we see these alien bodies from Peru that are in Brazil, or we're talking about some of these existing sightings, but in relationship to a frequency energy technology society that had abilities, like things that I'm going to make a suggestion for everyone to, just for thought, is that imagine a society that if you could send frequency, if you're using the ground itself, Terra Preta, if you were able to send signals, does that include an ability to restore all of your, whether you want to rebuild Terra Preta, whether you wanted to rebuild an individual or a society's information, how much of that, like this photo here with the trees in the background, the natural world, how much of that information may be stored, what we think of as natural, but in the hard data of the earth or the megalithic constructions themselves? And how much of that solid state technology would be actually memory storage?
Yeah.
And simultaneously, how much of that memory storage is downloaded through just having your feet on the ground or uploading? We know from experiments, from worms, that, and I'm using this because it's a specific case study of the memories of the mother transferring to the young through birth. And the reality is, do we really understand solid state technology? From a flash drive standpoint, we understand it's an external, it's primitive, but from genetics, and is it matter of not a matter of instincts, and you get your hunches, or, baby giraffe just knows how to stand eventually. The reality is we don't really understand the human brain, and whether it's shaped like a paracus or the alien or the mummified remains that are from Peru that we've just been all over the news, how much of all of it relates to a solid state technology only on a natural scale, on a megalithic scale?
Yeah. No, and that's just it. The idea that we have had technologies for millennia. We've just forgotten how to use them because we're not connected in that way anymore.
No, so we're misinterpreting what we get out of something as dumb as, oh, that's a blooming plant and that's a big building with a hard foundation, and it's got a lot of, like the Greco-Roman stuff that you showed earlier from my video. It's it's really well placed foundational structure for an earthquake. Well, yeah, but maybe it's really well placed also for sending and receiving signals, which are stored within the structure itself. And then through the people who are walking on it and the collective memory and the individual memory may contain information that's stored on a genetic chromosome DNA level of retrievable memory if we understood what that flash drive is.
Yeah. Precisely. And we are just now burgeoning on so many technologies, so many different things that refer and revert back to ancient concepts, ancient technologies, and the concept of piezoelectricity even.
Right.
The idea that you can generate power by squeezing a rock or crystal.
Well, you need to put bolts in your neck.
It's amazing to see what we are able to do, and the more minimalist we are getting with it. Almost a return to that concept of what can we do with natural materials.
Yep. We don't. It's so interesting whether you're very woo-woo or very esoteric, however you want to put it. No insults to, in quotes, no insults, modern scientific. The lack of understanding of crystals blows my mind.
Yes.
And the mysterious nature, everything, their characteristics, it's mind blowing.
I've tried to explain to people for years, it is a semiconductor waiting to happen. You've got quartz, you've got carbon, you've got mica, like all kinds of things. They're feldspar. There's, and I've even got a hypothesis that I'm trying to work on with the Great Pyramid of Giza, where it's basically a binaural beat chamber designed to resonate the granite around it.
The Zen and cures of the human world would be propagated, the obelisk. That's it. The surrounding technology. You have the pyramids. You have the obelisks. You have obviously other towers and constructions that were meant to self-maintain and not fall apart. But then what about the metal ones? What about the ones made out of plastics and materials that are long gone, or coatings that were on these constructions?
Yeah.
And all of it working together along with the soil technologies. And again, not just Terra Preta, but other combinations of those quartzes and feldspars and whatever. Pick anything. And it's not just that. It's just random placements of geo earth. That's just a hill over there. Well, now it is. But what did it look like 200,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago?
Yeah, precisely. What alignments did it have? Even our mutual friend Dennis Stone, when you go back and start looking at which I had the chance to finally go to America's Stonehenge and,
awesome.
and visit and see it. And it's remarkable. It's amazing. Even the positions of things and the way that things line up. It's one of those, it can't be accidental. And yet still the structures that are there, everything else are almost Neolithic.
So what do you think? Well, and we have these primitive applications of it, but how do you think it rewinds when you look at your theory on the Great Pyramid or the ones like it? How do you think it relates back to why the technology? I don't know, because my question is, it's on one hand, it seems obvious. On the other hand, what led you to think about it, about the Great Pyramid?
Well, number one, by all means of at least my knowledge of Egyptology, if the Great Pyramid was a tomb, whoever was in the king's chamber was never intended to reach the afterlife.
We hate you.
There is not a single carving or inscription from the Egyptian Book of Life for him to read to Thoth, to have his heart weighed against a feather and see if he either goes to the afterlife or it gets fed to the crocodile.
Chop, chop.
And without that, you ain't going anywhere, according to ancient Egypt and ancient Egypt mythology, religion, sacred means, everything else. It certainly seems to be as though it was occupied regularly for something, because there are definite burn marks inside of it.
Okay.
So torches, things like that were up in there. Now, when you look, I'll bring up a cross section of the Great Pyramid of Giza on screen.
Okay.
When you look at it, it's made up of all kinds of chambers, things like that. But what I see that gives me that idea more than anything is these tubes going along the sides. I see it, especially for the fact that the air shafts have baffles. If these were once again things to observe the sky or get a spirit to the afterlife, to a direct star, why would it have a baffle to block its way? To me, it's more the fact of these baffles are there to control the flow of air in a very specific way. And if you look, they're all at different heights. They're at different lengths, which if I look at it as kind of a straw. Same way if you pinch the bottom of a straw and blow across it, it'll sound like a whistle. And if you move that up, it'll be like a slide whistle. So these are basically tunable air shafts that with the baffle, you can control the frequency of the air passing by as it passes by the pyramid. Thereby causing the structure itself to vibrate at specific frequencies.
Yep.
Giving the person inside the king's chamber that very specific frequency, which if you look again, those two shafts go directly in there, and they are different lengths, slightly offset from each other, the same way that you would need for a binaural beat.
Well, that is interesting. And what do you think about the muons that they put through and found there's a whole another layer of either the build and or the build relational to the structure?
Yeah.
What about all the hidden there's all these hidden tunneling systems around the interior of the structure going all the way up. And did it have to do with just building it? But that French team that blasted it with the muons, how much of the structure are we looking at? Are we really seeing as the entirety of the structure, the functionality of those
seeing the entirety of the structure, period, because it was covered with limestone.
I know, right?
So it would have resonated totally differently than what it does now. Because of the weight on top of it and because of the meeting of granite and limestone that both resonate at different frequencies.
Yes.
You would have had much more of a capacitor in a sense, where you've got a layer of conductivity, a layer of resistance. With a gold cap on, or the cap of metal on top.
Yes. What the actual frequency has to be relational to the entirety of the structure, which almost never gets discussed.
Yeah.
And that some of the remaining cover of the pyramid was found. And, my friend Jendeo, the archaeologist and former co-host, and she has been there and has gone to some of the not advertised.
It was used for structures and temples and later dynasties, things like that.
Well, she's seen actual pieces of it. And her comment as an archaeological, she's done some really discerning and detailed technical work. And she's been in the mud. She's literally been in pits in Jordan and Iraq and Syria. And I trust her opinion and observation.
Cool.
And one of the things that she said was that the cover stones were covered in hieroglyphs, so the first thing they did was put graffiti all over it. Yeah. But the one thing that she said, and that's one of the things about the Egyptian language that a lot of people don't know. One, according to Yosef Awan, there is, it's not just him, but the general consensus is that the Egyptian language as we know it is only 60 to 64% deciphered. So we don't even understand the language. And of the hieroglyphs, are they something that dynastic Egyptians found, like on the entire side of the Great Pyramid? Did they find what was already an existing language, and did they give it meaning itself? And did they change or add to the language? And was it something that was the symbols and what was on the pyramid was maybe an instruction set or said something completely different. But Jen Deo's comment was that a piece she saw that was on the Great Pyramid that they found that was left, it had hieroglyphs on it. But in her opinion, those hieroglyphs were laser or machine cut. They were not primitive hieroglyphs,
not
like
chiseled
some
in.
of the complex. Yeah. So this pyramid, imagine it finished, folks, with this gorgeous finish that had a machine cut ancient language on it that to us we call hieroglyphs, but it may have been a full instruction set as to what the building did, or it could have just been, thanks for building this, and here are the following engineers. It could have said a lot of stuff. It was a big building. But the fact that the hieroglyphs found on this piece that was a final layer was so, her other comment was it was about 6 inches thick, and it was just perfect. It wasn't like it was a carved piece of stone kind of slopped on there. It looked like a manufactured final layer of a very complex, advanced piece of what would have been, as you just pointed out, a machine.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, even whenever you read the ancient depictions of the pyramids, that they shone in the sun, you know, because of the polished limestone that surrounded them, and the capstone of metal on top. Once again, it was a different technology. It sits on at least what we know to be the center of mass of the Earth. Pretty wild.
Yes.
Apparently, there's some hypothesis that the speed of light is encoded in the Great Pyramid via the spiral around it. All kinds of things, but the main thing is that it is not a burial chamber. Like, you can call it King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, anything you want, but I'm sorry, Zahi Hawass. Everything you've ever said about Egyptian religion and all that, it can't be a tomb. It's not a tomb. It's something else.
I hate that it comes down to us discussing, well, why would he say that? And then, it's hilarious. It's funny to me because, and we have this conversation with Stephen Myers of the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation regularly, who discusses how the Great Pyramids were built using a lock system to flood the area, which really makes a lot of sense. If you already had mastery of the Nile and you were already building dams on the Nile, why would you float the things for miles downriver just to drag them across the dirt? I just, it is mind blowing. And then the amount of hours put into describing large logs and little rolly balls of bearing.
Despite how they were built, the purpose of them is in direct conflict with exactly what you say tombs were and why they were inscripted the way they were inscripted. So unless we've got some situation like in the Mummy, where you entombed this guy with no inscriptions on purpose because you didn't want him to ever reach the afterlife, you know, unless that's the case, this was obviously a place and a building that was used for something totally different.
Yes. And it's not that, again, for those people out there, you have not 100 or 1,000 years. You have at least 6,000 years of dynastic people, the Egyptians as we know them, effing with this location. Yeah. Doing any interpretive, imagine what trends have changed in your lifetime. And granted, we're in a very spectacular technology, from now flash drives to us, Chris and I, growing up with a rotary telephone, to people that we lived with that may have actually seen no phone.
God, man, you remember when you used to just have like a 3-finger thick yellow pages in your head of phone numbers?
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, now I remember one phone number that can take a collect call in case I'm arrested. Like, that's all I got in my head now. That's it. Just the one.
I had highlighted phone books with like underlined phone numbers so that I could get to the page easier to call whatever it was that I needed to call. It's technology that's less than 50, or that the phone book. I mean, that's less than 50, 40, 30 years. It's been around a long time since we had phones, but
even to talk about the pyramids once again, like the idea that we move forward, humanity marches forward, time marches forward. Heck, even the locals took bricks from the pyramids to go build other buildings.
Oh, it's so annoying. You know? And that's in a period.
And because at some point, it's just bricks. It's just bricks. You know, it wasn't considered that sacred site anymore because society had changed. You know, they had moved past the point of the gods. They had moved past all of that. At that point, you're talking 1,000 years of history going by. Nobody's really using it. It's not like a cultural site. You know, even when Napoleon showed up, whenever you look at the pictures of Napoleon's trip to Egypt, like the Sphinx was buried.
Right. And again, you have Dr. Robert Schoch, and it wasn't just him. It was John Anthony West bringing Dr. Robert Schoch to look to, which is now thousands of geologists. It's not just one or 100, but you have multiple geologists looking at the Sphinx going, this water erosion is hundreds of thousands of years old. And at a minimum, tens of thousands. The minimum number was 56,000 years old, which lines up with Göbekli Tepe, which lines up with other megaliths that we're ignoring. I'm not saying that that's the age they've been identified at, but the antiquity of the ruins in Siberia and megalithic Japan and all over the earth, indicating a society that is grossly older than what we're giving everyone, this contemporary idea that, there's a face on the Sphinx, but it wasn't what it started as. And it's not how the Egyptian pyramid, again, that in itself, the pyramid on the Giza, by the way, there was what we know of.
There are numerous pyramids on the Giza plain. There aren't just the 3 or 4. There's step pyramids. There's all kinds of things. There are only the 3 finished pyramids of that type right there, but numerous around it.
Yeah. And we at least have, and what's interesting is, in the point of forgetting, like what's a flash drive? What's a phone book? Why, in just a short amount of time from the 1700s, it was known that on the Giza Plateau itself, when you talk about grabbing things and taking it for other purposes, there was still 7 pyramids, and there's no longer 7 pyramids. Where did the 7 pyramids go? Where are the remaining remnants? What happened to the ones that were on the Giza Plateau? And for everyone listening, the Giza Plateau, myself, I always thought when I was a kid, I thought, there's a Great Pyramid. And, you got Menkaure, and there's 3 big pyramids. Well, no, it's not a place you drive to and get out of a car like a giant Mall of America. The Giza Plateau is an area the size of a county, larger maybe. And so, but in the Giza Plateau, specifically in the location of the 3 big pyramids that we think of, there were 7 still in the 1700s, which they drew pictures of. Mm-hmm. And they're gone. So, there's just, even in the last 300 years, how do we not have that in the vernacular? We don't discuss either the fact that there were 7, but also that there are others where the foundations are found, but because they're not standing, we don't acknowledge them, I think, enough in the research as to the functionality. When you get back to that frequency energy technology and, like you said, binaural beats, what is a worldwide network of megalithic constructions capable of? Combined with engineered soil. Yeah, absolutely. Especially whenever you're talking about a soil that can carry currents, that kind of stuff, can carry micro voltages through it. Can you imagine walking on that and just getting info because you're walking around? You don't need to be, nuclear, you don't need to be microwaved by a 5G. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even being able to transfer energy from place to place,
because of it, being able to once again use piezoelectric means to transfer that micro voltage, all kinds of things. So there are numerous applications and numerous ways in which these things tie together. It's remarkable once you really start digging into it, and to know that once again, Terra Preta, this stuff that the Amazonians have been, well, never stopped making. Not like making since a certain time. Like the youngest that they have that is that they've tested so far is 5,000 years old.
Isn't that funny? And then you're the one who pointed out the that study of, well, can we deplete it? That Stanford's been doing, right?
Yeah. The Stanford study.
Well, at this point, what are they on 19 years?
Something like that.
Of using. This is for everyone listening. This is one that Chris pointed out, that here's an example of how
the things
useful
I find on Google while we're talking, bud.
Yeah. So, which is why I'm going to keep talking. We naturally dance well. This is one of those cases of Terra Preta being tested by modern science, in this case, Stanford University. And the article, what you'll see in the article is about the testing of not rotating a crop, which if you don't rotate crops, you're going to deplete the soil. Yeah. Terra Preta just never depletes. It just keeps functioning the way it's supposed to. It replaces what it needs. That's a level of technical intelligence that was clearly programmed into the soil itself. And again, this is the realm of either it's a technology or the easy explanation is it's a phenomena.
I just found another study on Terra Preta. I'll send this to you after the show.
Yeah, you should.
But yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see how many studies there that are now going on about this stuff, because once again, I remember studying in high school about the Great Dust Bowl. That pretty much came from malnourishment and non-rotation of crops. I lived in Portland, Maine. Just north in Freeport, Maine, was the Desert of Maine, as it's called, the only desert in the United States east of the Mississippi.
Interesting.
And it is, if you're ever in Maine, folks, if you're ever up near Freeport and going and hitting the shops and going to LL Bean and everything, the Desert of Maine was a sheep farmer who ran across the same situation, not rotating his crops, but also not rotating his sheep, his sheep flock. So as one depleted the soil, the sheep came through and, well, sheep eat things down to the roots. They aren't like a cow who just eats the top and cuds, they keep going. So eventually all of the ground cover was eaten by the sheep. And he ended up with a fine desert sand that is there to this day. Not many people are aware of it, but there it is on screen, right up the road from our good friend Dennis Stone at America's Stonehenge is, a huge desert.
That's phenomenal.
That has been there for years and years. It's really wild. It's an interesting place to go see, but a fantastic example of what can be done when you don't properly take care of land. And what
could
people like the Amazonian cultures have known for millennia.
Well, it's interesting. It's hard for people to comprehend. Like, how does Egypt look like it does when we see that it was a rainforest? People don't even, that's like mind blowing. It's a rainforest. It was lush
at one point.
And now it's, and even when I was writing originally, even 5 years ago, the research was showing that before it was tens of thousands of years, but that the greenery of all of North Africa may have been as beautiful as what the forest looked like behind that desert in Maine, but that it was as little as 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, that it was not a desert wasteland. It was a well-vegetated continent. So it's quite fascinating that an area would I don't know. There's a lot of mysteries. I digress.
I mean, it's just the fact of, once again, to bring it back to home, as we always do in our conversations, it's the fact of we forget so fast. We forget so fast. Good Lord, go show a teenager an 8-track.
I know.
Like,
and what is 8-track? Why is 8-track important?
What do you mean you can't? I can't just listen to whatever song I want on it. I gotta listen to 2 songs around it. Like, yeah. Once again, it's the idea of how fast do we forget as a humanity, and collectively forget. The example I give regularly is I'm Cajun. I am 50% Cajun. My mother is 100% Cajun. My grandfather and grandmother, Cajun was their native language. English was their second. They were of the generation that when they went to school, if they spoke Cajun, they were stuck in the corner.
Oh boy.
And it because that was the language of the ignorant. You're here to learn English. You're here to speak English. It took one generation, my man. You are hard pressed to go to deep Cajun, Louisiana, Mamou, Eunice,ville Platte, Pine Prairie, any of that, right underneath the raccoon's tail, and find somebody my age who speaks Cajun fluently. They may know a few words. They may be able to talk to their papa or something like that. But for them to sit down and have a fluid conversation, it's all but gone. All but gone in one generation. And that is an actual language that is indigenous to America. It dates back to 15th century court French and is a mix of that and local indigenous Indian language. So like totally uniquely a culture here in America only, whose language is all but gone in one generation. That's how quick it happens.
It's pretty mind-blowing. It is.
And there's a great restoration of that. I know the Louisiana public school system just put out like a Learn Cajun thing online, which I am all about and getting ready to go take myself, because I would love to learn my family's language. That would be awesome. And it's funny whenever you talk to even people in Acadia. I used to always make the joke whenever I lived in Maine and met people from Nova Scotia, like, what do you have to do to get exiled from Canada? No, be Catholic and not want a king? Like that, that pretty much seems like it was the case. So, but that's what led the Cajuns to, it was a great exodus where they were exiled from the country, for not wanting to ally with the king. So, yeah, interesting stories, interesting histories that are right in our backyards that we utterly forget about. So these losses of technology are, to me, not a stranger, you know, to anybody, they shouldn't be a stranger. We forget about these things so rapidly. Yes. We are in a roiling pot of technology right now where everything is different, everything is new, and to think that technologies that existed 1,000 years ago, like Terra, Preta, is just being appreciated scientifically and just being given its credence, you know, it's awesome. It's awesome to see. It's great to see that. And I love the fact that we are starting to realize as a humanity that there is still a lot of wisdom there, and that we need to go back and look at that again.
Yes. And it's one of those things that's food for everyone to think about. Everyone has stored genetic memories. Everyone has you might be a hunch now, but this is the encouragement. I think that everyone's takeaway should be that even if you don't have a specific mechanical mental mind for it, or you're thinking on it, if you've had weird dreams, things that you may have chalked up to esoteric stuff like second sight, or something that you thought was just an experience that was a one-off. I mean, you may have just, like, on the static rug of true human history, you may have rubbed enough of your feet to zap yourself into some reawakening of some kind that should just be enough of I would hope enough of a tidbit for you to just dig a little further and to share.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's just it. We are exposed to these things regularly in our society. I don't know. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people turn a blind eye because of fear, Jared. There's a lot of fear of change out there. And unfortunately, a lot of these changes that are coming and happening societally and humanitally, that's not a word, at all. But as far as humanity is concerned, these changes that are happening are vast. They are wide reaching and rapidly happening. As Art Bell used to say it, there is a quickening going on right now. And we are a lucky part of humanity to get to take part in that, to get to see that, to get to see not just the daytime of the Mayan prophecy, but the nighttime as well, which is what we're up against right now. The daytime is the discovery of a technology or change in humanity. The nighttime, which is what started in 2012, folks, is the application of it. What are we going to do with that knowledge now? And that is where we are at in the Mayan calendar, where they didn't even want to count beyond that. Not that they couldn't, but it was like, this is going to be, this next realm of humanity is going to be so shaking that we can't even count beyond that.
No,
we can't even figure or guesstimate what that's going to be. And that's where we're at right now. We are at the application of that technology with our humanity. Is what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? So
that this is why our past isn't, again, I really have always maintained that I think our past is a search and rescue. It's not a search and recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And why I am a big believer in some of the hypothesis of Dr. Michael P. Masters, who I interviewed at MUFON, and the idea of moving this conversation away from aliens and moving it into the conversation of non-human intelligence. Because the likelihood of a lot of what we're seeing being maybe even a form of time travel, a form of probe coming back to see what we've done, when we've done it, and how we can fix it, is probably a much greater likelihood. And that's a really, really interesting concept to think about. That's a really interesting, just to take what we're talking about right now and project it 2,000 years into the future, Yes. So, bringing that up as a point of conversation in humanity, I think, is a really huge part of this equation right now. As opposed to, once again, just like your book says, it's not aliens. Worse, it's us. It may very well be us coming to see what we jacked up right now, in this pivotal time.
It is.
So
it is my thought on the whole, the worst part. It's like there's a lot of layers to what's worse.
Yeah.
About our memory, our recall of it, all of it. It's not good.
Yep.
It's important that we go back through it or figure it out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Exactly. And I think Terra, Preta, and the technology behind it is a great place to start doing that, because it is something that as opposed to so many technologies, like I am a big believer that frequencies and other technologies were used to make geopolymers, which is why we see the interesting construction styles that we see at Pumapunku and places like that, where it looks like these rocks were melted and reconstituted. We have a very, very beautiful point of study with Terra Preta, where here is a still existing, still in use ancient technology. And we have a chance to uniquely study that, not just in the field, but in the lab, you know? And if we can get to a point where we can create that, at least with greater ease than cultivation of a spot for generations, that would be amazing. The things we would do, the things we would be able to grow, the stuff we would be able to advance for humanity would be amazing. So
yes,
thanks as always for the conversation, man. I always love our talks. I always love getting to hang out with you. Let everybody know where they can follow all of your work, Jared, where they can go to keep up with everything, where they can go to listen to the show, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. This is notaliens.com or Not Aliens on YouTube. And again, I apologize, everyone, but we are waiting for the new version of Not Aliens. It's Not Aliens, Worse It's Us. The new version's going to be pretty cool. There's going to be a hard copy. And
that's awesome.
there have been many updates to the website, but there are many more to come. And it got a makeover before I did my expedition to Belize a couple months ago, but we're going to go at it again, and we'll hopefully keep everyone looking forward to, tune in for more.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, always a great conversation, Jared. Thank you so much to your time. Hold the line while we close things out with the audience real quick before we head out to commercial. While you are online checking out all of the amazing work of Jared Murphy and It's Not Aliens, Worse It's Us, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm, folks. That is where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can like, follow, subscribe, share with your friends, all that kind of stuff. That's where you can go and share your story. If you're an experiencer of the paranormal, if you are an abductee, if you have had a cryptid experience, stop on by, share your story, share your evidence with us. We will get you in touch with professionals and share your evidence here on air to try to get you some answers. Stay tuned through this commercial break, everybody. We will be right back with our next guest, the good Dr. Shelly Stockwell-Nichola. We will be discussing the idea of hypnotherapy, the use of hypnotherapy in trauma relief, the use of hypnotherapy in past life regression, and so much more right after this, everybody. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that commercial break. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors, especially WebWorks Wireless. WebWorksWireless.com is our sponsor for all of our website live streams. They are the ones who have provided us with an amazing cellular network. If you are out there with a cabin, camp, RV, trailer, what have you, if you're a roving podcaster like me, go check out WebWorks Wireless, folks. Their connections are absolutely amazing. I get constant 25 up, down anywhere I am with that thing. I could go out into the middle of the woods and quite literally live stream a Sasquatch hunt if I wanted to. Anywhere you have Wi-Fi, anywhere you have cell phone connection, you will have Wi-Fi and hardline internet connection. Stop by and check them out. WebWorksWireless.com. They are your home for no credit check, no throttling, no speed dip internet connection. Our guest in this segment is Dr. Shelly Stockwell-Nichola. She is the founder and head of the International Hypnosis Federation. She is the author of quite literally like 26 books on the topics of hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, which we've talked about on the show before. She also works with people in the realm of PTSD, alien abduction, things like that. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shelly. How are you doing today?
Feeling great. I sound a little like a frog, but I'm feeling great, Christopher.
Well,
I've been that cold that keeps rolling around.
It has been rolling hard around lately. There have been kids like nuts sick at my kid's school. So yeah. He was just homesick yesterday with it. So, but
he'll be fine. But one of the things that is so cool about my profession is that I use hypnosis to feel better all the time, and it works.
Then we can get into that because, we've had people on specifically talking about the topic of neurolinguistic programming before. And the idea that, the old school 80s psychology of like a daily affirmation, the whole Stuart Smalley Saturday Night Live thing, like I'm good, I'm great, and doggone it, people like me. You would be surprised at what doing something like that every day actually does for you. Like even negative situations, guaranteed you could find a learning situation, something inside of there to turn that into a positive. How important is that in life, Dr. Nicholas?
Well, what people don't realize is we've been hypnotized 24/7 our whole lives.
Yep.
We were hypnotized in utero by our mother and what she said and what she did. We could hear while we're in utero. We're hypnotized at birth to comply or die. We're hypnotized throughout life to conform. And then we grow up and re-hypnotize ourselves to be happy, hopefully. Or if we were already happy, just to be productive and happier. But everything has to do with self-talk. And the most effective way to hypnotize yourself is when you're dropping off to sleep, because your mind then records, replays, readvances the message all night long.
Absolutely.
And so what you say to yourself when you drop off to sleep, you're in a trance. And when you first wake up, you're in a trance. Those are paramount to your day and to your dreams and to the outcome. But a lot of people have negative self-talk. They're fear-driven and they're hostile to themselves. So if you really want to be happy, you have to understand there are 3 relationships. You have a relationship with you, yourself, me, myself, and I, and all those sub-personalities. But then you have a different kind of relationship with you, another person. And in order to have a healthy relationship with yourself and then reach out to another person, you have to get over yourself. Because if you're still living in the everything's about me self, you miss the other person. And then there's a third relationship. There's the us relationship, which is the agreements you make with people at work, at home, at play, at school, whatever, to be collective groups. So there's actually 3 relationships, and each one requires that you wear a different hat and a different mindset. But every one of those mindsets is actually creating the outcome of your life.
Sure. Especially whenever you're talking about that initial relationship, that ego and id, the idea of the self-talk and where are you starting? Because if you aren't starting that conversation with yourself in a good way, in all likelihood, you are not carrying on the conversation in a good way with others that you're interacting with.
Right. A lot has to do with childhood hypnosis because it's always one thing or your mother,
Yeah. Well, as somebody that studied psychology and abnormal psychology for quite a while, it's funny, but no, so much of it goes back to your mother. And oddly enough, yes, like you're saying, straight to in utero, which a lot of people do not realize. One of the albums that I wrote years ago, about 6 years ago now, was actually an album for in utero fetuses, to help calm them and soothe them and things like that. It played in my son's room from the time he came home from the hospital till we moved. And just recently he asked where his music was. But yeah,
nice.
like I wrote that music for him to listen to in the womb, you know?
That's so beautiful.
Well,
You'd be amazed what happens when you regress somebody to remember their birth and the in the womb experience.
wow.
Called pre or natal. The memories that come forward are fascinating. You know if your mother was physical, you know who she was having sex with, you know what she's thinking, you know if she wants you in there. Then when you're born, that makes a deep and permanent imprint on your life because and they say in Spanish, you dar la luz, you gave light to yourself.
Yeah.
And there you are with these people, and how they hypnotize you determines a lot of the beliefs you have. And then what happens is some of the beliefs you have are true, but some of them are not true for you. Might have been true for them. So what you do is when you stop, you have to literally question everything that you think, because not everything you think is true. A lot of things you tell yourself are simply repetitive hypnosis from other people. So I like to question everything, and then I like to see what is true for me. Then I like to get over myself and hear what's true for you.
Well, and to get over yourself and hear what's true for you is, I mean, that goes right back to our pre-record conversation of lack of empathy in society. You know, so many times we hear this turn of phrase like, oh, I feel so bad for you. It's like, well, sympathy is great, but if you could actually learn to empathize with the person and find something in your life that commonly ties you together with that situation, it goes so much further, not only psychologically, but spiritually for people.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. We have mirror neurons in our brain. And so we are actually picking up energies, whether they're negative or positive. And so empathy is also a good thing, but you have to have some boundaries as well.
Sure.
Because sometimes people slime you. They give you an idea or belief that is hurtful to your well-being. And sometimes they give you nourishing things. But, you know, there's two words that always play in my mind, and one is compassion, which makes me taller than you and bigger than you. I feel so sorry for you. I have compassion for you.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I love the word empathy because it does feel with the person. And you need discernment, because if I'm feeling with you and you're toxic, that's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can understand that you're toxic, but I don't want to play. I have to keep my boundaries very clear in that situation. But if I can stand in your vibe and understand where you're coming from, and then let it go like wind past me if it's not nourishing to me, then I've got a really good thing going in terms of us. Otherwise, I may be hypnotized and vulnerable and do stupid stuff.
Well,
you know, like that's or something.
Well, and that is something that we've talked about not only with other hypnotherapists that we have had on the show, Dr. Shelly, but with other people in general whenever it comes to brainwaves, how we operate. Even whenever I speak on shows about using binaural beats in my music, things like that, the example I give people is our body and our brain wants a pattern. It would much rather go through the day autonomically than to have to think.
Yes.
The prime example is driving to work. You know, are you actively aware of everything that's happening while you're driving to work, or are you in a partially hypnotic state and going through a rote habit, knowing where the exit is, knowing how far you're driving? You know, how many times do you get down the road and go, oh, wow, I'm at that exit already?
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely road hypnosis. But Christopher, it's interesting. Imagine this with me for a minute. Imagine you're driving a car and you're really paying attention to the road because you don't want to kill yourself and crash, right? But imagine that sitting next to you in the car is your best friend who's telling you about their love affair. Now you're in two mind states. You're driving the car.
Yep.
But The next is telling you some salacious information that is really exciting, and you want to hear every word, and you're listening very carefully because it's really interesting. But at the same time, there's another thing that happens. There's a flash in the sky, or maybe a rainbow, and you say, oh, I remember when my mother died, a rainbow came to me. So now you're in three mindsets. You're in the trance of the driving, you're in the salacious trance with the passenger, and you're now in spirit. And that is a dance that is happening simultaneously within you all the time. So it becomes a very, very interesting thing, like, who are you? And, and the book Alice in Wonderland, the caterpillar goes, who are you?
That's right.
And she says, I don't know. I did so many people all day. Because that's the truth of us. We're so many people each day. But the most important thing we do in all these people is to have them agree to give you the goodies, to be in favor of well-being. One of the things I just wrote was my book on vagal joy, the art and science of hypnoneurology. And that's what I talk about when I come to Mid-America Conference. We have our neurology responds immediately. And for your listeners right now, I'll do this exercise with you. It's fun.
Please.
First, think of something that annoys you. Don't tell me what it is.
That took about half a second.
Okay. All right. So you got it?
Yes, I do.
You've got to place you. Now, take your ears and pull them out. Just pull them straight out. Take a deep breath and go, ah. Make an audible, ah. It's gone. You can't find it. It's gone. Let go of your ears. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So you stimulated your vagal nerve, which switched your mindset. Here's another one. Think of something that maybe frustrates you or something. All right? You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Take your hands and flip them up like you're going to catch some moonbeams or something. Take a deep breath. Ah. It's gone. You can't find it. You see, every time you play your vagal nerve, which is behind the back of your head, where your neck comes to your head.
Yeah.
Every time you play your vagal nerve, it's like playing a Stradivarius. It is in charge of whether you're calibrated into fight, flight, excite, or freeze, or whether you're going to calibrate into joy, relaxation, harmony, and excitement in good ways. So your vagal nerve is emotion. There is nothing else. Your vagal nerve tells every single part of your body what hormones to release. And it does it instantaneously. And then the emotion comes when it hits the gut, not before. And it's the most interesting phenomenon because for years hypnosis was, had different styles and different names and different protocols. But now I've come to understand it's all neurology. And it's a fascinating thing when you understand you can play with your neurology and bring joy to yourself in every second if you choose it.
Wow. And as you were talking, one of the many things I do, Doctor, is bring up articles, things like that. And I found an article that I remember reading from the Harvard Gazette about expanding our understanding of gut feelings and the idea that women who suppressed emotions had less diverse gut microbes in a study. So the actual suppression of your feelings affects your entire body from your gut microbes up. And that was a fascinating study that was done out of Harvard.
That's very interesting. Well,
to show exactly how far down our feelings resonate. Whenever you get to the idea of depression leads to physical ailments,
Correct. Correct.
It's remarkable how powerful our mind, our emotions, and our state of being are to our physical being, Doctor.
Correct. So the hypnotists call the gut the abdominal brain, And we like to think of 3 brains. There's a brain in your head, a brain in your heart, and a brain in your gut. And these are all calibrated and controlled by a very complex bundle of nerves that starts back and goes around your face, interfaces with everything. It does interface with your gut bacteria. You have about 5 pounds of bacteria in your gut. And it does interface with those, each of those little bacteria in your gut, those microbiome, they're called. Each one of them has a mind of their own, but they interface with the vagal nerve. It's very, very interesting. The vagal nerve controls your elimination. It controls your sexuality. It controls your heartbeat. And its job, the vagal nerve's job, is to keep you alive. And it's been doing a darn good job, Christopher, because you're talking to me right now.
Yeah, it does. It does okay. And I am currently working with somebody on my personal anxiety and panic issues that have cropped up literally over the last 2 years. Strange, just weird stuff. Wow. Where it's like I have panic attacks where I didn't used to.
You need a book.
and believe me, it's one of those where it's like, wow, like those situations used to not affect me whatsoever, and now it's like something is quite literally put upon me when they happen.
Let me give you a simple exercise if you start to have a panic, okay? Yeah, and we're going to do it together right now.
Okay.
Just so you can, okay?
All right.
Yawn. Take the biggest yawn you can make. Big yawn. Big yawn.
Uh-huh.
Open your mouth real wide. Good. Do it again. Look up this time. Big yawn. Eyes are kind of squinted, but big yawn.
Okay.
You let out a sound at the end of the yawn. It's very helpful. And one more time. And put your hands above your head, and your anxiety will completely go away.
Interesting.
See, it's all neurology. Your whole body, your whole being is neurology. And it to me, it was the most mind-blowing thing that has happened to me in all my 26 books, was to really come in tune with who I am biologically.
Yeah.
And, we are certainly programmed, and we have thoughts that calibrate the vagal nerve. But you can recalibrate it quite simply by doing things the vagal nerve likes, things that are fun for the vagal nerve. The vagal nerve likes the out-breath more than the in-breath. The vagal nerve likes certain body postures, like we just did. The vagal nerve likes it if you put your hands behind your ears, and you'll find there's a dent behind your ears. Mm-hmm. Can you feel a little dent?
Yep.
If you rotate your fingers in a little circle there and smile, even if you don't feel like it, you immediately feel better. You help it, because that tells the vagal nerve it's safe, and we don't have to use resources for survival. We can use resources for renewal.
Yeah. And we quite literally just did a program with Jan Asari of carbonic certainty. I met him at the International Remote Viewing Association, and he has an amazing philosophy, kind of tying together the whole concept of quantum entanglement and the idea that two particles can influence each other despite distance, and the idea that we are not only carbonic beings, but we are exhaling carbon. And that carbon that we are exhaling has our fixed frequency in it.
Yes.
So, and like you're saying, the vagus nerve likes an exhale more than an inhale. Like we said in that interview, that the exhale is the one thing that you biologically have control over. When it comes to the inhale, your body will tell you when to inhale. Feel free to hold your breath.
Wow.
Like if you hold your breath, you have utter control over your exhale. But your body will tell you when it's time to inhale. You will gasp for air.
Yes, that's so true. Absolutely true.
So it's interesting to see the fact that our vagal nerve in the back of our head, which is tied to so much, whenever you start looking at acupuncture, acupressure, like that is one of the main points used in those sciences for thousands of years.
Correct. So, with all these things are coming together now as we start to understand the body dynamics. It's a beautiful thing. And but I think the most mind-blowing thing of all is that we can take charge of how we feel and how we think, how we communicate, and how we receive communication. That it is a God-given gift to us. And sometimes we have to reframe some of the things we learned and rewrite them. And I like to think of a higher self that stands behind me and tells me the truth. And I like to think about spirit above me, guiding me, because I have perhaps a purpose or a life purpose, or I know I have a life purpose. Maybe not everybody believes that, but that's okay. I believe that most of us have a core value and a life purpose, or we wouldn't be here.
Yes.
That's just a belief that I hold. And I believe it strongly because when I hypnotize people, very often guidance will speak through them and give them that kind of information.
Interesting. And now, before we go into this part, let's loop back real quick, because I think it's really important for us to talk about the idea of imprinted memory. Like you were talking about, the idea that we are programmed with certain things, and not necessarily maliciously programmed, folks. It's not like your mom and dad, like, well, I don't know. I guess there are some horrible, horrible people out there that may do that to children. Who knows? But I'm a parent. I've got a 6-year-old, and I try to bring him up in the most open-minded way possible.
Yes.
To the extent where he literally has full conversations with himself while playing games. I sit on the side and I watch and I listen to the conversation.
Nice.
Because, there will come a time where logic takes over and that no longer happens. And there is, as somebody who is a kid and even as an adult, invents things, builds circuits, stuff like that. Like I quite literally build devices that I see in my dreams.
Nice.
Because, hey, I saw it. It occupied a part of my night. There might be a reason I saw it. I just built a small streaming box that I used at a buddy's show.
Cool.
That I built because I saw myself using it in a dream one night. So it's one of those, I'm not going to disturb that process for him and be like, hey man, stop doing that. No. That's a 6-year-old, and that is a perfectly normal thing. And that is no different than me having the conversation in my head or even out loud whenever I'm wiring all the stuff that's over my left shoulder right now in my studio.
That's correct. Very well said. I like to think of you and me and all the people listening to this as a miracle, first of all, because we came here, we made it, we're the sperm that made it.
The odds are slim.
When you think about it, you started out as an egg, which was the largest cell in the human body. And then you were surrounded by 100 little spermies. And the egg, chooses the sperm to be itself. So we have free will. The moment that the egg looks at the sperms, one's holding a box of candy and flowers, and says, "Hey, I choose you to be me." The moment you do that, you murder 99 other sperms, and you then grow yourself into a fetus, and then you grow yourself into a baby. And the moment you grow yourself into a baby, you've got all these imprints because you have them from maybe before birth, maybe at conception, maybe in utero, and then at birth. You start to take in information that is relevant to survival. If you don't please the lady with the milk, you die. So you better please the lady, and you better please the man so you don't die. And you have to please the siblings, and then you have to please society, and then you have to please religion, and then you have to please environments. And so what happens is you're always programming yourself for survival, and it's the right thing to do, or you would be here. But some of the things that you took on were your mommy and daddy's movie. They got up on the stage and they said, I'm your mommy, I'm your daddy, and you are now an addendum to our movie. We created this movie, and so you better play your part. And they decide what your part is. And if you're a good little boy or girl, you either play like the mommy and daddy tell you, or you rebel and you do the opposite. But what happens is, somewhere along the way, you say, wait a minute, is this my movie or theirs? Am I in the right play? Am I playing the right roles? Is this who I was meant to be? So it sounds like you have a highly creative child and you're highly creative. Then, it sounds like you're molding someone who's very similar to you. That's beautiful. But let's say you have a child who, is trained to be an engineer, a mathematician, but they're really an artist.
Yeah.
They may have to rebel, and they may have to say, Mom and Dad, I love you, but I'm not going to hang out with these beliefs. So these imprints, I like to think of imprints like your mind is a garden, and imprints are these notions that get planted in your mind, and some grow into beautiful flowers, and some grow into horrific weeds. And the job of self-talk or a hypnotist is to maybe not necessarily remove the weeds, to honor that the weeds were there for a reason, but to plant more seeds for flowers so that pretty soon there's nothing but a beautiful garden of your thoughts. And an affirmation would be, I'm keenly aware of my self-talk. I'm keenly aware of my self-talk, and I quickly change it to positive. Because a lot of the imprints may be negative. Like, I remember my husband had a complex most of his life because he thought his head was shaped like a toe. And he thought that because everybody would say, oh, look, he's a towhead. He had blonde hair.
Yep.
And in those, they called blonde hair towhead. So he thought his head was funny. Well, there was nothing wrong with his head. He just misconstrued, imprinted a notion that made him feel bad about himself.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I'm a redhead. I have a redheaded kid.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Same here. Same here. Because it is kind of a badge of honor, and it is something that, as a kid, it'll get you to grow a thick skin quick because you stand out from everybody else.
I always wanted a red-haired kid, but it was never going to happen.
It was one of those that growing up as a kid, like I got a lot of teasing. I got a lot of teasing in elementary school and junior high, things like that. It wasn't until I hit college that I realized I was an actual commodity with it.
Yeah.
When I hit high school was when it really hit, because that was the early mid 90s. It's when everybody was dyeing their hair, all that kind of stuff. And it was like, oh, wow, look at all these people trying to get the color that I have, who teased me for years about it. So, yeah. And those things, believe it or not, they can stick with you. They can stick with you in either positive ways, and you grow from them and you get strengthened from them, or they can become an Achilles heel for you.
Right. And that's when the affirmations kick in. That's when you start affirming the result you'd rather have than the other one.
Yeah. And now, once again, these things are impressed upon us, and we kind of impress them upon ourselves once again as a point of survival. And
correct.
We talk about it regularly on the show, the fact that our brains are looking for a pattern regularly, but B, they're also wired to learn faster from negative reinforcement. Not that that's a good thing. I mean, it kept us alive for millions of years. It helped us survive. It helped us perceive immediate danger from future danger, things like that. However, once again, the negative self-talk can stick with you 10 times more than a piece of positive self-talk.
Yeah, isn't that odd? It's a little phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah. So, it is important to keep yourself positive, to keep thinking positively, to try to do that whenever you can, because, hey, negativity is going to be there. That it ain't going anywhere.
Well, it is what it is. The world is a yin and yang experience. So, I like to think that everything that ever happened to me and everything that I made happen was part of my evolution, my growth, my experience of being a better version of myself.
Sure.
So, yeah, it sounds like you're doing really great work with yourself, Christopher. You're really raising your child well and doing a great job with yourself.
I appreciate that. I've told people for years my job is to raise the most independent human I can as fast as I can. I am here as a support network. I'm not here to make decisions for him or anything like that. That is his job as a human being to learn to do. And if I take that from him, that that will stymie him for life if he doesn't learn that a decision is his to make. Early.
Right. But he needs to know your opinion also.
Oh, absolutely.
Daddy says this is a little bit dangerous. I don't think that's a good idea, but it's up to you.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I gave an example just the other night on air with an outdoor specialist. We live here in Texas, and this last year we had quite a few days, like well over a month of 100-degree days. And that's normally when the news will be like, hey, everybody, don't forget the critters are thirsty and hot too. Pay attention in your garage. Like, that's when snakes creep in, looking for shade, looking for water. That's when scorpions sneak into your house, that kind of stuff. And I went to go check the mail one day while my wife and kid were gone and picked my shoe up, and underneath it was a pretty decent sized scorpion. And I kept it in a glass bowl and waited till my kid got home and showed him what it was and used a magnifying glass and showed him the stinger and the pinchers and all kinds of things. And we went outside together and let him go. Explained to him, the scorpions keep roaches away. They keep bad bugs away. They won't hurt you if you don't play with them. You see one, come tell Dad. And about 2 weeks later, I was laying on the couch and he was like, Dad, there's a bug in the room. And I went in and there was, like an inch-long little scorpion on the rug crawling its way across. Yeah. But he knew what it was at that point and knew not to play with it and knew to come tell Dad.
Brilliant.
But it took me taking what could have been a very scary experience for him and turning it into something interesting and educational.
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful.
And
he's lucky to have.
Well, the important thing is that we have the choice, Doctor. We talk about it regularly, that we consent into so many systems, and you can consent into that continued system of oppression that you may be experiencing in your life. Totally unintentionally. Once again, it's not like your parents were trying to oppress you for life, people, by impressing these things upon you. But if they have given you what they consider to be a capital T truth, and that truth does not work for you, and you were trying to live within it and within the bounds of it, that may be a hurtful experience to your life. It may lead you down roads of addiction, all kinds of things, because you're trying to fulfill somebody else's fulfillment.
Yeah, a lot of times we're hypnotized by our friends.
Yeah.
And carried to the parents. So, most of the people who smoke, they didn't smoke because of the parents. They smoked because somebody put them behind the barn and they wanted to fit in with their buddy and they wanted to feel really special or grown up or part of a tribe or whatever. But we know that smoke will kill you. So that's something a parent really needs to impress on this child, that even though you have free will, your body needs to be honored and respected. There's a problem. There's not free will when it comes to doing something stupid. And putting poison in your body is stupid. I don't care who you are and how brilliant you are. If you do something stupid, you know it's stupid.
Yeah.
But you do it anyway because you're hypnotized Nobody put a watch in front of your face and said, you are now a smoker. You did that. And so then it comes a point where you say, do I honor my body? If I honor my body, I'm not going to put burning leaves and paper in my body anymore. That's stupid. So what a hypnotist does is they wake you up from stupid trances and now put you in smarter trances. And you know what smarter trances are. No hypnotist has to tell you.
Yeah.
You know that stupid is smoke, period. I mean, it's just, there's no conversation here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I believe that every person has a higher self that tells the truth. And whenever I hypnotize a client, I always ask them, what does your higher self think about that? And the higher self will always tell the truth.
I have heard that previously, and I remember I went through a regression on air. Actually recorded myself going through a regression, and that was asked of me whenever I went through and looked at the tape after. And getting into that, let's start breaking into your work with abductees, because that is something that we talk about regularly on the show as experiencers, and the term I came to realize at the MUFON symposium this last month was ontological shock, and I love that term because it's so true across the board, whether it's a paranormal experience, an experience with Bigfoot or cryptids, an abduction experience, or even a craft witnessing experience. There is a shock that happens to your system that when you come out of it, the world is no longer the same.
Well, I've had lots of people who say they've been abducted, and when I put them in an altered state, not all of them were really abducted.
Sure.
They saw a really good movie, or they thought it was fun to do it, and they had an active imagination. But I do have some very wonderful case studies where one in particular, an artist friend of mine here in Southern California was supposed to have open heart surgery in a couple of days. And he had this very profound lucid dream where they took him up in a craft and they performed surgery on him in the craft. And when he went to get his surgery and they did the whatever test they did before the surgery, they said, there's nothing wrong with your heart. So he had a miraculous healing. Yeah, wow. I have it. And, it was truly a miracle, and his heart was fine. However, a lot of people that I've hypnotized to remember their experience, it was a fabrication made up by a subpersonality that was for fun or interest or whatever. So I never believe anything until the higher self validates it. And the higher self is the part of you that's wise beyond wise, that knows when you're telling yourself the truth and when you're not. It knows when parents are on track or when they're not. It knows when things are cuckoo or they're not. There's a part of you that's wise beyond wise. And to call upon that all-knowing part of you is really profound. So when we have an enlightenment experience, be it meeting spirit or having an abduction or seeing a craft, we do question things. It's beautiful because it kind of throws away the ho-hum everyday experience. I myself have seen a craft and a couple of times, and it's been a very fascinating and mind-blowing experience. And I didn't do it alone. I was with two other people or three people who saw the exact thing I saw. So I know I didn't make it up.
Yeah.
But we do make things up as well. We do have hallucinations, positive and negative hallucinations. That is the power of suggestion. That is hypnosis. We're always giving ourselves suggestions.
Sure.
And so, and certainly it's worthy, if you think you've been abducted, to be hypnotized and explore it. And most importantly, what did you learn? not, hey, I'm so cool I was abducted. If you were or if you weren't is irrelevant. What's really relevant is what did you learn from the experience? And same with past life regression. If you live a past life, the key question at the end of a past life is go to the light, be in the light. What did you learn from the light? And how does that learning affect you in the here and now?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would waste my time or my money, because we're here now, here and now, living our lives, hopefully to the best we can. So it's very interesting, this alien abduction thing. My brother is an alienologist. He's an anthropologist. So he writes books on the Anunnaki and things like that. He's really into this.
Ooh, cool.
I went to a conference where he was speaking here in Los Angeles. It was broadcast all over the world. And there were like 8 different people in a row, and they were all experts. They're all anthropology gurus, okay? And they were all, one was talking about we come from lizards, and somebody else said we came from here, and they're all coming up with their theories. And then they're arguing with each other about who made up the best story. And I just was like flabbergasted. My brother said, how did you like that, Shelly? I said, well, Sasha, it was really interesting, but it's just a bunch of storytelling 101, and it may be true, it may not be true, but to argue with each other that your story's the best is kind of bizarre to me. I don't get it. And so that was a very interesting thing for me to witness. I don't think that my story is better than your story. I think your story is perfect for you, and my story is perfect for me until I change my story or you change your story.
Yeah.
And the real is, how does the story benefit you? How does it benefit your well-being? How does it benefit the well-being of those you love? And how does it benefit the world? And there we have the crux of any experience. You have to check it out with your higher self.
Yeah.
And that higher self knows everything.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. And I mean, and it's even interesting the way that we as humans block memory.
Yes.
We are, I was just reading a great article the other day from Psychology Today about false memories and how we create them. And how we accept them as part of our narrative. I myself had a situation when I first moved to Austin, back in like 2011, something like that. I ran across somebody on social media, that I went to school with, and went to befriend them. And they sent me a long message about, I don't know why you're trying to friend me. That's
weird.
And it went into this whole thing. And I remember a point in my life where I had a family member that had to move away. Never understood why, anything like that. It went into this whole thing between them and my family member. And and how I had apparently said something at school when we were kids, things like that. And I remember none of this. If this was the case, it was when we were like 8, 9, 10 years old, you know?
Right.
Apparently it was, and I apologized to her. I was like, if that is the case, I am so entirely sorry. I do not remember this. I believe the experiencer until proven otherwise. So I believe you. But I was flabbergasted and taken aback because I am not the person to do that. And I did not recall the situation whatsoever, Doctor. Not at all.
Well, life is a story you make up. Everything about your life is a big story. And some of the stories serve you well and some don't. Obviously, her story was serving her well for whatever her reason, but it wasn't serving your intention of being a friend to this person. So, you know,
what had happened was bad, no good. Don't get me wrong. But I do not recall my involvement in the situation, at all. So
Well,
who knows what I blocked out because of the injury of my cousin moving away, or not understanding that, or even the shock of whatever his actions were.
Nicholas, I'm a forensic hypnotist. I hypnotize witnesses and victims of crime.
Oh, wow.
To remove the absolute experience. But you always have to know that memory is very tricky. Some memory is distorted by other memories, by your perception, how you did it through what dominant senses. It's distorted, but still, when you hypnotize a victim or a witness, they often will remember specific things that are helpful for an investigation.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful not to lead a witness into a memory. And people, they make up stories. We do storytelling all day long.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We tie our emotions to it. Regularly, we discuss the fact of my brother and I grew up in the same house with the same single mother. If you ask both of us, we probably have different emotional impressions.
Oh, yes, definitely.
We grew up in the same place with the same disciplinarian and everything else, but we filter things differently. We emotionally look at things differently as people.
Yeah.
And that is tied to our capital T truth. That is tied to how we see the world. That is tied to how we process the world. That is tied to how we filter information in the world. Every bit of it.
Yeah. Yes, well said. It's true. Yeah, everybody's walking in their movie, making their movie, and creating the storyline. And if you want to be happy, then change your story if it's not working.
Yeah.
If you want to be miserable, keep embracing a miserable story. I mean, it's very simple, really. This is not brain surgery. This is truth. Truth is not always beautiful, but it's very profoundly helpful.
Yeah, it's not always the sweetest medicine, but it's medicine. And it works, and it works miracles once you find it. And I have tried to explain that to people for the longest time, that once you find what you're supposed to be doing, you'll never doubt it. You'll never doubt
absolutely.
it. It will be drawn to you and be attracted to you to where you cannot put it down.
Correct. That's me in writing books and seeing clients.
It's me with engineering and doing what I do with electronics, things like that, and building things. Like it's just what I do. And it's interesting because it's what I did as a kid. It's what I did as a kid. Yeah. And even whenever I used to teach spirituality in Sunday school, and, I say it all the time, I taught ages 4 to 40. The only difference is by 40, you should know better than to pull people's hair. Every 40-year-old is just as immature as a 4-year-old, and every 4-year-old is just as mature as a 40-year-old. And it's just how you treat them and how you pose the situation, and like when you're 4, if you look at somebody that this is what they're into when they're 5, 6, 7 years old, go back and check in with them when they're 40. If they've found that again, like guaranteed, that is like a driving passion in their life. That is the one thing that I will give the Montessori school system all day long, is that they let a kid play until they see what a kid gravitates to, and then that is what they base the education around.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it draws you to it, and it's remarkable. And as we get ready to let you go, let's kind of wrap this all up, whether you're a targeted individual or abductee and having issues. You can change that through neuro-linguistic programming. You can change that through daily self-hypnosis, whether you're having problems smoking, drinking, what have you, you can change that through neuro-linguistic programming and daily self-hypnosis, daily affirmations. What can people do for those quick fixes? And I hate saying quick fix, because but there is a quick fix to happiness. It takes a little while to kind of replug the wires, but there is a way to process things to where there's something good that happens every day in your life.
Sometimes it does take time, but sometimes you can change your behavior in 1 hour for life.
Yeah.
And so, change is a readiness for change, but it comes with a assessment. A lot of people have what I call attention ADD, attention deficit disorder, but it's not intention deficit, it's intention deficit disorder.
Yes.
They don't know what their intention is. And if your intention is to be happy, then everything can fall in line if you have a strong desire to be happy and to find your purpose. So I would say, get high with your higher self, talk to yourself and listen, and then find your path to bliss and joy. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how does somebody know that that they need hypnotic help, doctor? Because there are some who it's beyond their means, so to speak. They need a little bit of extra push, no different than those who go to therapy long term, things like that. And there is nothing wrong with that. How does somebody go about finding a proper hypnotherapist, somebody who is properly certified, somebody who they resonate with?
Well, they can call me at 310-541-4844, Shelly Stockwell-Nichola, and I can refer people to you in your area that are crackerjack hypnotists. And if you want to get results, hypnosis is the way to do it. It's the quick way to get the results you want. That doesn't mean there isn't long-term therapy that's worthwhile.
Sure.
But most of mine has come from referrals from psychiatrists and psychologists, because people get stuck in therapy sometimes.
Yeah.
And they keep manifesting misery again and again rather than going for solutions. Hypnosis is solution focused. So you can do it in one. You can get rid of a phobia in 3 minutes.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing what you do with the mind. So I've done this for 53 years because I'm obsessed.
and
I found
you're obsessed with the right thing. That's just it. Once again, once you found your passion in what you were supposed to be doing, you went headlong into it.
Exactly.
And good for you, because your work is far-reaching, amazing. Once again, 26 books and counting, classes, courses, founder of the International Hypnosis Federation. Before we let you go, Doctor, let everybody know where they can go to register for classes, where they can go to learn neuro-linguistic programming for themselves, things like that.
All they need to do is email IHF, for International Hypnosis Federation, IHF@cox.net, and we will answer, and I will call you back if you give me your phone number. I like to talk to people on the phone and see what's on their mind, and love to find out who's ready to be happy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything that you do, because I know numerous people who hypnotic therapy has helped them. Hypnoregression for their trauma has helped them. I would love to have you on again and again and again to discuss this topic. It is one that is near and dear to my heart.
So anybody who's in Chicago can come to the Mid-America Conference, which is a really cool event. I'll be speaking there. I'm a keynote speaker.
Awesome.
And that's going to be on the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd of October in Chicago, Mid-America Hypnosis Conference.
Fantastic.
All right. Great to talk to you.
You too. Please do hold the line while we close things out with the audience. While you are online, checking out all of the amazing work of Dr. Shelly Stockwell-Nichola and the International Hypnosis Federation, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all the episodes. That is where you can like, follow, subscribe, share the show. That is where you can find CuriousRealm.com/video, where you can find all of the video channels on YouTube of all of our guests, as well as our live coverage from events like MUFON Symposium, the International Remote Viewing Association, and so much more. Thank you guys, as always, for your open hearts, your open minds to these conversations, to these topics. This is how we change humanity. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault on our website, CuriousRealm.com. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast services, as well as YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV through the APR TV app, available on all app markets. Curious Realm is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more great content or to become a sponsor of Curious Realm or other podcasts, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. And remember, the other side is always watching.